Hi everybody, welcome to our newest show, Geek Out Weekly. We're going to be taking a look every week at a topic in depth, but probably a little more casual, a little more chilled out, a little more weekly. It's me, Ben, and I'm joined by that lovely laughing man, Aadil. Hey.
Hey.
We hope each week to have other guests to do some sort of interviews and things like that as well. Bring you sort of a different show than we usually do on every week. This week, as a first show, we thought we'd revisit one of the better TV shows from last year, The Mandalorian. We're going to have a little chat about Season 1, before at some point in the coming weeks we'll probably have a chat about Season 2. Maybe once it has all released. So, we'll get into it, shall we, dude?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. Okay, so Mandalorian, at least for us in the UK, released about October time, about a year ago, on Disney Plus. When did Disney Plus start? Was it about October-ish sort of time, September-ish sort of time, something like that? And they did the clever thing of releasing it weekly to make sure you didn't just have your week free subscription trial and then disappear after you'd watched the only sort of original show for the service.
Can I say, I get that we all want things on demand, but especially, one, it's just good marketing for water cooler type shows for tentpole things. Like, that's why Game of Thrones was Game of Thronesy.
Yep.
In a way that, like, if they just dumped 8 episodes, it would have, especially Series 8, would have been different in, like, as a conversation piece. But I also like especially shows that have like an overarching story, but they aren't just like a 16-hour movie or whatever.
Yep.
I like the slow drip feed. I think it makes you, one, it lulls you into a false sense of this is better than I think, because often you see the flaws of things just from fatigue. You just like, oh, I've watched 3 hours of this, I'm enjoying it, but also that actor always does that thing, or you start noticing things because it's like one-on-one, like in repetition, but also it just gives you that feeling of revisiting, and like it allows you to stew on in between episodes and think about things. And when it's like a well-made thing, that's better than like, I wonder what would happen. I'm now thinking about the motivations of these characters and like what's going on, etc. versus next episode, oh, that's what happened.
Absolutely.
Like, it makes you more like reactive. Like, I guess interactive is what actually I think I want to say. Is you're more interactive with this thing, even though it's passive entertainment, just because your brain will do things in a way that if you just watched 8 episodes of Mandalorian in a row, you're going to be like, huh, I wonder. Okay. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I thought it was a smart move earlier, a couple of months ago, for the Boys Season 2 for Amazon to put that out weekly as well. You know, it was something that my wife and I sat down each week to watch, rather than we would have just blitzed it out over a weekend or 3 or 4 days and never really thought about it again. Whereas now it's had more time, it's had the same amount of time with me, but it's had a bit more mind share with me thinking about it in between episodes and things. And yeah, The Mandalorian works very well at doing that. As you say, it's better that it's not kind of one big 16-hour movie as such, and I think that works quite well for The Mandalorian as well, and does so for other sort of TV shows, stuff like Star Trek Discovery, where yes, there is that big through line of that storyline, but you have this episodic nature to it. There are those more contained stories to be told within this bigger narrative as well, and I think that definitely helps with The Mandalorian, for them to have these kind of like these side stories that, whilst they provide more on the characters and they do, you know, push the story along a little bit, it's just expanding it that more, making you care more about the Mandalorian and the other characters in the show, rather than just being like, here is a big movie for you to watch. So yeah. Should we start with, we've given a little bit about our first impressions about how the show was kind of presented to us, but why don't we run down sort of our first impressions, what we think, before diving into a few little points that we want to expand upon?
For sure. So I'll go first, I guess. I really liked this. I liked it from scene one, episode one, basically. But I realized sort of partway through, because I actually, despite saying I like the weekly, I ended up watching it in like 3 chunks.
Okay.
Of like a couple episodes with some break in between. And that's when I realized, oh, actually, I thought a lot more between chunk 1 and chunk 2 than episodes 1 and 2. I was like, oh, I actually wish I had sort of kept up with the zeitgeist. But I realized that this is the Star Wars. This is why I love Star Wars. This felt Star Wars to me.
Yep.
And it felt exactly like what I've been missing. And I think it's a combination of things which we'll get into, like quality of writing, world building, scope, etc. But also, one of the things that a lot of, horrible militant Star Wars nerds complain about is like things that are obviously made because it's still a kids series as well. And like Jar Jar is probably a great example. Like in retrospect, I know people who are younger than me who never had the problems I did, because when episode 1 came out, I was already basically like almost an adult, like I was in my late teens. And if I was 6, I would have reacted differently.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But this is an adult show for adults. And because of that, they can lean into the grittier parts of Star Wars rather than trying to keep it clean, except for the big bad, which is sort of one of the problems with the newer trilogies, just like how much of the like, this is a lived-in universe sort of felt lost. And this is basically why I love this, is because most of it is kind of tiny. It's a very small microcosm. It's from the bounty hunting perspective, and it's like gritty, and a few small interactions of a few people, and it's not that these are the main people of the universe deciding the fate. Even with the very adorable MacGuffin that's the heart of the series, it's like, it's not like the whole world is doing this. It's like there's an unknown job by a small-time dude, as far as I know, ex-Empire, right? And we're just tracking the Mando, right? And that's great. And I realized like halfway through that, this is what I wanted Solo to be.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
Right. I wanted it to be about underbelly, small, a few jobs, versus this crazy, we're trying to do the big Star Wars thing where the characters have superpowers, but he doesn't, but he's still like bouncing on a flying train and not dying because he's just acrobatic as well as a gunslinging smuggler. And you're like, this is too over the top for the kind of world Han Solo was supposed to be part of. Like the whole point is he's kind of just a 2-bit smuggler until he bumps into Luke and Leia. And that's when his like more universe expanding, more like more than just I'm getting by smuggling life begins. And instead it's like, he's always kind of done these, except for like the Corellia thing, right? Or the what is it, the Parsec thing,
the Kessel Run.
Kessel Run, thank you. Oh, see, told you, weekly. But anyway, so I just felt like it was like, this is exactly what I want as an adult. It's also what I want as a spin-off, that it's not leading so far into Jedi-ness and like the core stuff. It's just like, here's the universe, bits and bobs. You're going to learn other things. And we're also going to trust you to let us feed you that information slowly.
Yeah.
How about you?
I agree. I love that it is a cast of unknown characters who don't have the weight of the universe on their shoulders. That this isn't the kind of the story of that universe, and it's great that they've been able to kind of take characters and think, well, let's make something that is expanding upon Star Wars, that tells the story of our created universe from different perspectives, revisits familiar locations, has familiar themes. It is very much Star Wars, but it's a little grittier, it's a little more mature, it isn't as world-ending as the story could be, and I think there's definitely benefit in them exploring this on a wider scale as well. You know, I know that there's maybe an Obi-Wan Kenobi show coming. Be interesting to see what part of his life that comes from. But again, it's Obi-Wan, so you would imagine that it's going to be a little bit bigger, and the stakes may be a little higher. But
I mean, having seen this show, I'm hoping that. So you have to remember that, like, he wasn't super happy with the Jedi, you know, in the first trilogy, rather than the original trilogy. Eps 1, 2, 3. He and then and we know Jedi's have to go in hiding because the screw up that is Anakin. I would love to see something like Kung Fu or like the Incredible Hulk, where he's a nomad,
just wandering.
He has to go into hiding, but like you might lean too much into the similar beats of this show. But like it would be great if it was, because he can't be super out and out Jedi because they're now like big problem with Empire, who is in control at this point in time, right? Like because the Obi-Wan show is supposed to take place between episodes 3 and 4, basically, and that's a 20-year time, right? It's a Luke age time, so 17 maybe. But like in that time, he's got to have developed into being the hermit who lives on Tatooine. But for a while there, he's probably just in hiding and roaming, and maybe trying to look for other Jedi that aren't dead before he finally gives up and just looks over, like watches it over Luke, you know, from afar. And in that case, it will be more like a bounce around, but probably not world role. Like this is in between his acts on the Universal stage or the Galactic stage, and I think that's really cool, or could be really cool. Yeah,
definitely. Good. Right, we'll get back to the Mandalorian then. So let's have a little chat about the story, and maybe any sort of standout kind of episodes or scenes that you really liked from this, that maybe helped back up what was happening and the characters.
Yeah. So I actually want to chat about, and don't worry, we're not going to do this for the whole thing, but episode 1 scenes like the first like 5-6 minutes, that bar scene.
Yeah.
Because I think it set the tone, and the rest of the show kind of delivered that tone, right? You get him, he walks into a bar, some dude's getting hassled. I think it's played by Horatio Sands, which is great. So there's this blue dude being hassled because apparently he's from a race with tasty glands, which is such a great way to show you what this movie is, right? Or the show is, right? Because it's like, yes, this is the part of Star Wars where sentient beings may be killed because parts of them are tasty and they're bumped into in a bar, right? Like, boy, that just is like, hey, here's the grit. Just dump it down. Like, this is where we're starting. And then obviously this guy turns out to be a bounty, and so Mando like comes in, he gets harassed by these same people, beats them up in such a great way. Like, it has a throwback to Mos Eisley with the like, I don't like you, my friend doesn't like you either kind of vibes. And then he dispatches one really quickly, and then the other one runs away, and he uses his Mandalorian style, like Boba Fett had the same thing, right? His grappling hook on his wrist, to grab the guy's leg, dragging him back into the bar, and the guy grabs his own blaster to shoot him, and his response is to shoot the door and close it on the dude and slice him in half. And you're like, yep, that's our Mandalorian.
It is a very good setup for what's to come. It presents the Mandalorian. I think this is one of the things I really like about the character. It presents the Mandalorian as quite a tough, very skillful character, but there's lots of times through the series that we see him like fallible and weaker than a lot of other characters. And so
I would say not necessarily weak, but soft.
Not weaker, but weaker as well than some other characters. You know, there are characters that can pick him up and just throw him around a room. and it's not even his skill can't get him out of those situations sometimes, but to present him in this first instance as being this very skillful character is a good starting point to make you think, right, okay, I get this, I get what's going to happen. I can see kind of where this character is within the wider world and how he has got to this point as well, tracking bounties and being a successful hunter. I think for me, overall, I enjoyed the story. Running in from that first episode, setting the tone, kind of all the way through, and again seeing the Mando kind of warm to one of his bounties, to the child, and kind of take him on as such, as a protective role. Constantly having this back and forth about, does he drop him off, does he kind of keep him, changes in his mind and all of that sort of stuff, to go back and taking on the Empire to kind of get him back, and really understanding that he's not a bounty, he's not really an asset as such, that he is a living character, someone that he thinks has more worth, I suppose, than he has thought about previous bounties, perhaps. I think part of that may be the mysticism behind the abilities that the child has. I
actually don't think it's that, though, okay. Right? Because he didn't grok that the horned beast floating was the child necessarily.
Yes, true. Yep.
The thing that what I like about, so one thing is the writing of this is just really stellar. There's a lot of subtle ways that they point to this. Like the transition is, this thing's worth a lot of money, I've got to protect it, but it's a little baby that's real cute, and so you kind of see his that's mine. That's my payday thing start, because he keeps being protective. He ends up slowly morphing into a caretaker without wanting to, because he has to, because that's how he gets his pay. The way they write, gets the thing, ship is broken, stolen by Jawas, right? So now suddenly his quick turnaround isn't there. So now he has to spend a couple of adventures protecting a baby, while the baby's just clearly imprinting on him and feels safe with him, etc., and playing with his stuff or whatever. And then it turns into, I can't just let this thing die, because I've spent enough time to realize this is just a baby. And then later on, I'm going to jump around, I think, because we're just talking the story in general. Later on, we find out that he was basically orphaned in an Empire attack. He's a foundling. And one of the things in Mandalorian culture, apparently, is that foundlings are taken in, and until they are of age, they are protected.
Yep.
And then they are become Mandalorian, because Mandalorian isn't just a planet, it's also a creed, right? And so you see why he thought so much to a baby alone, right? Because he lost his parents, and he was protected, and so it kind of makes sense on top of that, in a way that you could easily, so without that backstory, again, because it's written so well and it's fed to us slowly, it if you're questioning really he's so cold in the first couple episodes, how come he's now warming up to this kid? Is this cloying? And it's no, actually his backstory makes it so that it makes sense, and that's super smart. And it makes it because they fed that slowly, you're you see the flashbacks in the first couple episodes of his planet being attacked and his parents clearly dying. They imprint that before they feed you that before you see him warm up to the child, but they've already sort of established that notion of co-orphancy. And then he thaws, and again, because it's a slow from need to protect my money to want to protect the child to I can't follow through with this. All of those are so organic, and you've already they foreshadowed this change anyway. And so just really well written, and also and they also subtly, like I said, draw those protectionist things over the first few episodes that you're okay. And I think the biggest one of that is Ep 4. So, like, he makes the decision to, like, Ep 3 is where he saves the kid, and you kind of get the idea that he's just, like, not cool with weird Empire experiments on a baby, which is totally cool. And you're like, okay, but it's Episode 4, the Seven Samurai episode, which is the 2.5 samurai, because we'll count the child as a half. Which, I mean, it is. Okay, small tangent. I love the Western. Like, this is a Western. It's space Western. But Westerns took a lot from samurai movies, especially Kurosawa. Hence, the Magnificent Seven is the Seven Samurai in the West. Like, Fistful of Dollars is Yojimbo. Right. So you see nods to both throughout the series. Of, like, just strict this is like samurai type film, and these are Western tropes or whatever.
Yeah.
And this is like the quintessential, because the setting is like the Seven Samurai. It's much more rural, feudal than farms in Magnificent Seven. Like, when I saw the reed basket and the hiding and those, like, water trough things, it's like that's like rice fields.
Yeah.
That's this is the, like, first shot I was like, oh, it's the Seven Samurai episode, isn't it? When, like, attacking a village, all this, like, very feudal imagery and, like, really poor, not a lot of technology. It was like, cool. And then, of course, it was, and it was like, and they did it well enough. Like, I loved that episode, even though I knew exactly what was going to happen from the start, because it's just an homage to the Seven Samurai. But yeah, it was just really good. But also, the interstitial scenes, instead of being about the broken love story, which is a big part, like, of the Seven Samurai, right? There's that tension between the very skilled farmer lady and the protagonist, which, again, same thing in both, right? Is a lot of scenes of the child playing with other children and being happy, and him being like, I want him to be happy. And he even makes the decision at the end to, like, I will leave him here. And then it's like, nope, you can't. Bounty hunters are tracking. No. Anyway, how about you? Is there a specific episode or, like, scene you wanted to?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of episodes which I liked. Episode 4 being one of them, but also the prisoner. So the episode where he has to go on the prison break, where he meets up with, I can't remember the character's name, but it's the rotund guy from Sons of Anarchy. That they're friends, and he meets this group that he's going to be going out with to break someone out of a prison from an alliance ship as well, isn't it? Is it an alliance ship?
A rebel, yeah. A rebel.
And
I guess no, New Republic. That's
New Republic,
because we're in the we're in the New Republic in this.
Yeah, and there's a couple of characters on this group who he is familiar with. One he's had relations with, I suppose would be the best way to say it. But it shows the like the more dastardly side of the galaxy again, doesn't it? It's this kind of like, here are all of these anti-heroes or antagonists and the protagonist, dependent on kind of how you see the episode as it progresses through, and how they kind of deal with each other. And actually it's kind of constant double crosses, it's almost like revenge all the time, and I think it just works really well as almost as a self-contained episode as well, that it doesn't drive the bigger narrative along. It's a little bit of a break from that, whilst we're still seeing some elements, the relationship between him and the child's abilities as well, and kind of how the underworld works and reacts, and it gives you that little bit of tension. When the robot's on the ship kind of exploring around, will he discover the child? What's going to happen there? And it's kind of interesting that it gives you a little bit of a bond with the child, even more than you kind of previously have. You're like, no, he can't, don't discover him, leave him, kind of, but also wanting to see the child's powers as well. Like, if he does discover him, what's going to happen? Is this where we see kind of the extent of the child's powers? And you don't. The Mandalorian
that's also so good because
absolutely
that scene with Zero pointing his gun at the child, and the child is like, I need to protect myself, and starts trying to force something, and you're like, what'll it be? And then Zero just kind of explodes, and you're like, what is that? Oh, Mando's back on ship and shot him in the back. Cool. But I agree. I also think it's from the story, like the arc of the series. It's such a good episode because loved Seven Samurai episode, even though it's kind of like a bottle episode, which I think the series is kind of great at these bottle episodes.
Yes.
I think I want to see more of that in season 2 than just story arc ones. Again, in 8 episodes, you're setting up, and then you want your 2-part finale, which also was very good.
Yep.
But like, I also thought chapter 5, the Gunslinger, was the weakest episode by far.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
I was kind of bored by it. It felt really like, I think part of it is they just like, how do we get this weird assassin job while keeping the baby safe? Just give it to a lady character. And just, we won't deal with the like core tension of the earlier stuff. Like, it was really weird when he fought the Horn Beast and he just had the floating cradle, and you're like, why is he bringing a child? It's like, right, the child is his, right, at this point, the child is just his, like, cash.
Yep.
And he can't trust Jawas. So he can't leave the child in the sandcrawler. He has to take it with him. Boy, is that weird. You can see that tension of, it's a tiny, fragile-seeming being that he needs alive, but he also can't be apart from it, but he's doing all this regular Mando dangerous stuff. Weird, right? And in the Gunslinger, they just ignore that. While in the Prisoner, there's tension around. They clearly, once he's discovered, it's a thing that he's worried about. And what makes the Prisoner so well done is that before we get into the 2-part finale, we're reminded of what a friggin' badass he is, because like Sanctuary, Gunslinger is mostly like about double crosses and like reminding us that, I think the point is, it's reminding us that he's not safe. Because the whole point is the Thieves Guild or whatever, the Bounty Hunters Guild is all angry at him. But Prisoner's about, oh yeah, when he's not having to juggle, like when the child is roughly safe, he's going to take out all these other badass people one by one. Like, it starts out like a kind of like he's the cornered rat, right? And it quickly turns into basically like an alien-like experience where he's the xenomorph.
Yeah, he's stalking
he's just
through
this like
the corridors.
Unstoppable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, as soon as he stops the big brute, it's like, you're all done. Slowly but surely. So I really like the Prisoner as well, because it, like, one, it was just flexing his badassness, but kept, even though the child wasn't in most of the show, it kept, by having it discovered, and then with the double cross, you're thinking, if they get back to the ship, what's going to happen to the child? Like, they kept this child stakes throughout the episode, while with that, instead of just kind of ignoring it.
Yeah. I agree. I think maybe we can move on to kind of the finale and what we think maybe of how successful it has been. And there's maybe one scene I just kind of want to bring up as well, which again I really liked. Is where he is traveling to with oh no, his name's gone from my mind. Apollo Creed, Carl Weathers. With his character, you know, he said, "Look, I want you to get the Empire out of the town. I'll make everything good with the Guild again if you help me, basically get them off planet." And he agrees to that. And they land really far away, and they have to track their way across that. And then there's that nighttime scene where these giant flying creatures all come in and just cause like carnage. And I'm glad they threw something else in there, and like it's absolutely there to show the child's healing ability and to let everyone know that this is what the child can do.
I think it's actually even better than that, because it's in the scene where they're talking about the plan, and Carl Weathers is like, it's this easy, he only has 4 stormtroopers around him, like, don't worry about it. And it foreshadows that their plans aren't great because they can't even camp safely.
Yeah.
And sure enough, the regular plan goes to shit in multiple ways, right? So like, it's really good foreshadowing. You lose a couple of the blurgs. So poor Nick Nolte is sad. Quill. You would have to talk about like actors who played things in this show because it's madness. But yeah, I also agree. Grief Karga, that's what turns him, right? He's like, I owe this child
Yes.
because it saved my life. And it's also so, it's like a jump scare scene. Like you don't expect it, and the whole scene is really poorly lit because it's at a campfire, and so like it's just flashes of things, and it works so well with like the CGI because it's dark, but also just in general, it gives you the sense of who the fuck's dying. Like, are they gonna take some of the other dudes? And I think they took one of the other dudes.
Yeah.
I can't remember. But no one really felt safe. And I even got caught in the like when they kept pushing the kid away. I'm like, is Carl Weathers gonna die because they're too stupid to let force heal happen? Like like you should know that's not gonna happen, right? But I was so invested in the narrative that I was legit like, fuck, this is ridiculous. People, let the kid heal you. Versus like when you're not like deep into like the claws of the narrative, pardon the pun. You get tricked by it. That's why but that's why it works, right? It's so well written. Yeah. The stakes feel big that you're just sort of like, oh, well, this might not go the right way.
Absolutely. And there's a scene earlier on as well where he kind of force chokes Cara Dune as well, the child.
Super badass.
And it's kind of like you sort of almost see both sides of things, but understand that he's also a child. Yes, he might be 50 years old, but you kind of see how he's got that protective nature. He needs to protect himself, but also he can see those elements where he, as a character, is like, I'm going to heal this after this big thing that's happened. They've protected me. I need to now help them in some way. And I can do so as well.
I mean, he also tries to do it earlier to the Mando, just in the very beginning, and then the Mando keeps pushing him away, which is again orchestrated across the series.
Yep.
That he tries to do things by instinct, and you're like, blah. But I think that's what's great. It's like he's clearly a gentle child because his instincts are almost always help heal. It's just help Mando is choke Cara because he's still a baby and he doesn't get that this is like a friendly contest.
Yep.
And he's just watching, and like they're amping it up because they can't finish this arm wrestle, right? Like, and so they're getting more aggressive, and it's that like change to, I'm gonna have to like just turn it up a notch and really put it in to win this. I'm not gonna have my friendly banter and just exertion. I need to like use emotion to fuel. And as soon as that switch turns, he's like, oh, this thing's angry at my dad figure.
Yeah.
No, and it's great. It's also like, oh, of course, like these are all just force powers you choose not to use.
Absolutely.
It's not like you don't have access, like, which a lot of Star Wars does sort of like, these are light side powers, these are dark side powers, but you don't think, at least on like choke, because it's just literally using your force, like an actual force to close air around someone's neck. Of course, it's not like lightning, which maybe you need access to deeper parts of the dark side. It's just in the same way I can lift and push things, I can push your windpipe closed. Like, it's got to be the same sort of family of universal powers. You just choose not to use it against people.
Absolutely.
And the baby doesn't know any better.
And when you see other characters like opening doors and things with their force power and stuff like that, it's the same, you would imagine, set of kind of physics that are that are enabling that as well. So yeah, really, really good at showing sort of the infantile nature of the child, and kind of how he reacts to the different situations.
So the last bit of story I wanted to say, obviously I'm big on overarching stuff, but I really liked how they had people pop in and out between episodes.
Yeah.
Because what makes a good sort of, it's an ensemble story pretending to be a loner story, and they trick you by having Cara feel like a one-off. He meets her on the planet. He's like, I need your help. They clearly bond. They relax a bit before he moves on. Done. But then she shows up because he needs help for the last two episodes. We have his like only seeming friend be Grief Karga, Carl Weathers, and then he betrays the guild. So now his like only friendly person in the entire first few episodes is literally an enemy now. And then it turns out even when he like calls for peace, he's trying to double cross him. But the child's like healing abilities ends up saving Mando from betrayal, and then Grief is now on his side, and he remains on his side throughout the rest of the last 2 episodes. But then the second to last scene basically is Grief saying, "I'm gonna stay here on Navarro and rebuild the." You want to say thieves guilds? I played too many in
fantasy
games. Yeah, the bounty hunting guild, and Kara's like, "I'm gonna stay here too, and get new credentials via him, and then we'll see." But like, so even when they had this huge adventure, and you're like, "Yeah, this works because we've got IG-11, we've got Quill, we've got Kara, we've got Grief." For such a small, like, there's only like 10 people per episode, right? Really, like, it's so half, except for like throwaway soldiers, like, of the named characters, half of the named characters basically are on his side in the last 2 episodes. And then it ends with, "But it's me on my way, I'm a loner." Babe. And again, it's just really good to have like good quality writing that makes you feel like he's always alone, but he's secretly never alone. Like, even in The Prisoner, he's like, "Oh, I have this old friend." And so it starts with, "I'm on this team job because of a connection I have from my past." And it turns out that connection is bad. So by the end of the episode, he's clearly alone. So you start with, "Oh, right, he has a past. So he's got people to rely on." No, he doesn't.
Yeah.
But we get to have half an episode where it's him doing a job with 4 other people or whatever. But it doesn't work. So he's back alone. And like that interplay of giving him compatriots to make more compelling action and storyline, but taking it away in a way that doesn't feel super artificial.
Absolutely.
Will be tougher in season 2, but I'm really looking forward to see how they do that.
Bring them kind of back in and make them reoccurring throughout the episodes. Yeah,
and the last scene is just the very iconic end of the series with Gideon climbing on top of the TIE fighter with his vibro blades still going, and you're like, so if you thought this was just westerns and a western imagery, you're like, no, we get where westerns got a lot of their tropes, and we're going to that well too.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just like, oh, he's real badass. He's like half a Darth Vader costume with a blade, clearly not a Jedi or a Sith, but more dangerous than a bureaucrat.
Yes, yeah, he's not just an officer. It's not just an Imperial officer. And I think that kind of the ending, the big battle, everything is a really good sort of culmination of the series. You know, we're getting that kind of, not to the extent that the movies give you some kind of sort of like pitched battles and space battles and things, but you've got some big action scene. But it's a good back and forth as well between the characters and the Empire. You know, they progress a little bit, the Empire gets a little bit better, they bring out the big gun, Mando gets blown up and taken inside and kind of has to be healed a little bit, and then there's that kind of, they're trying to escape and the Empire are on top of them, and then something out, you know, all of those little things which are showing this nice sort of like cat and mouse element that the Empire, whilst the New Republic are around, the Empire are still a force to be reckoned with. That, you know, even though they are kind of an officer with maybe their attachment, and that's kind of all they've got, they are still sort of powerful in their own sort of in their own right. And I think that does a very good job of still portraying the Empire as the big bad and as a powerful enough force to be, that you don't want to go up against them, really. And that final scene with Gideon on the TIE fighter was badass. It's really, really good.
They also, I think, did a really cool job of making the Empire seem just in tatters.
Yes, yeah.
With like, so I think it's probably a good segue into like talking more about characters, but Werner Herzog, what a stellar casting choice. He just does it perfectly. But all his stormtroopers are in beat up, broken, like ratched armor. And you think, okay, so he's just on his own little wing, and he's doing this weird thing in the name of the Empire, but he's clearly just like essentially a tattered mercenary warlord. They mention all these things like mercenaries, warlords, but actually he's just probably trying to get in good with Gideon, who clearly has a chunk of part of the galaxy that is still Empire-y Empire, because everything, they've got access to money, new equipment, shiny stormtroopers. They have the coordination and setup of like we are still the Empire versus we're like just a group. And like the whole plan of like once you kill Werner Herzog, they'll scatter because they're just basically mercenaries at this point. Doesn't work with Gideon because that's an Empire battalion, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's all the strengths of the top down structure of the Empire and Gideon's the top of this chunk. And one of the like he ends up killing all of Werner Herzog's people. It's because like you get the idea that he's using these like offshoot people as pawns to try and get his job done, and when they were failing, it doesn't matter because they're not really his people. These are just throwaway people who want back into the real Empire, which is still there.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. We talked a lot about characters. Do you have a standout? Do you have one character which you kind of really like or really disliked?
So, I mean, in the Gunslinger, there was like nothing I liked character-wise. I thought all the characters were really flat. But that's just because I think the episode was the weakest of the bunch. Again, with Werner Herzog, even though we ended up not being the big bad, I think, especially in those first three episodes, where he assigns the job, gets the kid, and then gets betrayed. He's so good. Like he you get the notion of power, even though his group isn't well tailored. And you get the idea that he's really in charge of at the time, right?
Yeah.
Like he's in charge of this chunk because he's got the doctor dude, and he's like, I get that in your line of work things can get a little messy, but so in that case, proof of termination will get you half. And you're like, and then the doctor's like, no, but we need it, and he's like, enough. And it's just like it's clearly a live job. That's what like life capture. That's what grief tells him, right? And then he gets there and he's like, I understand. I just want you to do the job. And it's like, this is amazing. And he like, there's so much gravitas to his character.
Yeah, there is.
I don't remember his character's name. I just think of him as Space Werner Herzog. So he's a really big one. I also really like Gina Carano. I was surprised how much I liked her character, which was like super in-depth written, but she imbued it really well.
Yeah. Like,
there's like she's this ex-shock trooper. She clearly hates the Empire. So when he's like, it's against the Empire, she's like, I'm not doing anything. Well, and like the end of episode 7 or whatever, or maybe beginning of episode 7 when he grabs her, and she's like, I'm not doing jobs. I'm basically retired. And he's like, oh, it's against the Empire. She's like, I'm in. And like the way she just quickly was like, of course. And she still has, even when she's told to cover up her, like her shock trooper tattoos, she doesn't cover up her New Republic tattoo under her eye. And she's like, you're going against the Empire. And you're like, I love the New Republic. What? And like the fact that she on like barely weapons combat, like is on par with Mando. That's her introduction, right? And like she literally gets the jump on him, is really cool. And she just, I think, played a really good role of we've seen some shit, and I'm a soldier, and like that bonds us. And like, yes, so after Sanctuary, she's more inclined to help him out, especially because of the Empire. But then you don't feel like she's over invested when she's like, "You are coming with me." Because it's not like she's a mercenary, right? She's a shock trooper that's now out of work and has some problems, but she's seen his soft side. She's seen he's trying to do the right thing, and she's like, you cannot die here. And it didn't feel like a false love story type thing that these shows often, like these like it wasn't the tropey, I can't let you die here because I'm falling for you or whatever. It was just like, we are comrades.
Yep.
This is not how it goes. You cannot die.
Yeah.
And I think a lot that could be acted way differently and feel like the trope, and it wasn't, because I think Cara Dune just was played really well.
Yeah, and I similarly, I really like Grief. I think Carl Weathers plays that character perfectly. He comes across as the schemer. It is what you want from that character, absolutely. That he will just turn on you at a moment's notice, but in the back of his head, he is always trying to work out what is best for him. and that is how he lives his life. And I thought he brought that really, really well. It didn't seem flippant. It was very much, you could see that he was like, right, how the cogs were turning, like what will be best for me, and this is now what I'm going to attach myself to. And okay, maybe there's a little bit of not a bond as such, not the same with Cara Dune and Din Djarin, but he has a little bit of respect, at least, for him, to think maybe I will let you know that it's a double cross, but then it's another double cross, and I'm now going to hang out with you guys. But a little bit of that because he was healed the night before, and those sorts of things. You can see the depth of that character in the way that he kind of works his relationship with the other characters through the series.
Yeah, and I think the key there is that he has some sense of honor.
Yes,
not just out for himself.
Yep.
And you get that, like, given the Bounty Hunters Guild's code, like there is a code, you get that's why he's risen to some notion of, he's like, what, local union president, basically.
Yeah.
But also it makes it so that, like, that final scene of those characters where he's so like, yeah, you take your time, you're always welcome here, you'll get the best jobs, don't worry about it, buddy. And you're like, you are a salesman. Like, you like, it's this happy ending, and part of this is genuine, like there's a home for you here, but the rest is just, you're a scary man and we're on good terms and I'm just gonna say nice things to you. And that's why it works so well, is because Carl Weathers gets to act pretty earnestly because he knows that all the previous acting will like push forward this notion of this is not super genuine. Versus, I think someone lesser would have tried to make it sound salesman-y, and he actually sounds like, if you actually listen to it, it's pretty earnest sounding. But that's just because it doesn't need to be played any less earnest, because you've known enough about grief.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Let's round out our conversation then, and chat a little bit perhaps about the production of the show, and to have a very tenuous link from Carl Weathers. I just want to talk about that music, the intro music. It's just got enough Star Wars to it, but the first time I heard it, I thought, this is like a Rocky theme tune. Like it has that kind of.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't get Rocky from it. You're talking about like the main theme?
Yes, the main theme. Yeah.
Sorry, the intro theme, right?
With all the trumpets and stuff. Yeah. Absolutely loved that, and it's completely unexpected. I'm like, this is an amazing piece of music to accompany something that it sets itself kind of apart enough from Star Wars, but still has those through lines to make you know that it's a Star Wars show.
Have you seen a lot of spaghetti westerns?
Yes, and it is very much that. Yep.
Yeah, so I think what you're saying is it is a spaghetti western, like it's a Morricone space spin, like a spin on Morricone to who did like all the Dollars trilogy, right? I think that's the right name. I'm probably wrong now. Shut up, Twitch chat and Twitter. It's fine. It's spin on that and it makes it feel Star Warsy still.
Yes.
And I think it like toes that line perfectly. It feels like you're gonna watch a western, and it feels like you're gonna watch a Star Wars, and it turns out that's exactly what happens. I also really, on the music front, I really like the main score, like the main like Mandalorian theme that goes throughout. That's like the little more bass-liney thing with a couple twinkles.
Yes, yeah.
Which is a nod to westerns as well, but it has enough ominous and then hopeful that it works in so many scenes, because that's basically the literal theme of the series. It's like all this ominous stuff happening, but also there's the child and this relationship and this orphan foundling stuff, and that's the twinkle, and it's just so well matched. And so you hear it, like once you hear it, notice it, you hear it throughout so many really impactful scenes, or like interstitial scenes where something impactful has just happened, and it just reinforces a lot, and it's just really well done.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's it shows the level of production and the quality, not just from the acting and the writing and everything, but from that level of production and that music, which fits so well. just shows that they've taken care with this, and I think that comes through as well in the way that it's shot, in the edits. They haven't done, they've not gone over the top with CGI. It's quite downplayed. Talking about that scene of the campfire, taking that lighting down and doing all of that stuff can allow them to, whilst maybe keeping the budget down a little bit, it lets them kind of have this character which they're not having to sort of like fully render, and making it a little bit more scary that you can't see exactly what things are. Then you've got the big horned beast, which looks good. There's a couple of little bits in this where CGI does look a little against the grain of the rest of the show.
I found that the worst on ships flying over beautiful vistas.
Yeah.
I found that it really stuck out in a way that I think in the Star Wars films, because they don't bother going to vistas, it doesn't. You're just like, this is a fake thing flying through fake place, and then they're like, we'll go to real place but have fake thing. But overall, I agree. I think the fact that there's a lot of costume and practical effects and puppets, this is why it feels like a lived-in and Star Wars thing. This is why I really liked it, because practical effects have such a larger impact. And the mix of CGI and practical is really well chosen. Like, sometimes you notice the CGI, but often there's a couple transitions where they switch, and then you're like, is that good CGI or is that a puppet? I don't know. And often I just stopped tracking it, unless like there was something jarring, and that's because that's because they did spend the time to make in the editing room and also the planning room, right? Because you film the puppet, you insert the CGI, so you have to make really smart production decisions on when to use both. So one of the things that I sucked was the IG-11 was a great character. Taika plays it to a T. Also, I love how he directed that and I think wrote that episode and put him as the first named cast because of that hilarious scout interplay. So he's first cast in order of appearance, IG-11, Taika, after directed by Taika. But he also has this huge farewell thing, but the robot slogging through the lava is obviously CGI, and it was like, because there's definitely IG-11 out there that they use for a bunch of the scenes. And I like that obviously in the action and the spinning and stuff is not practical, but I liked that they had a non-CGI bit. And it just sucks that his last scene was very animated. In not the right way. But other than that, I thought there's niggling bits, but I think overall they found a good balance between the two.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before we get to final thoughts, I did have my largest complaint about the series.
Oh, okay.
And that it's the stupid tracking MacGuffin. Because in this universe, there are trackers that have the bio-identity of something that the bad guys never had possession of, we think.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not like it was in the cradle, because we swapped that out. It's just, this thing tracks anyone from anywhere. If you have the right code, you can track anyone in the entire galaxy. And how did Obi-Wan survive?
It's obviously new tech. It was only made a couple of days ago.
I mean, and like I get giving everyone trackers. I wish it was like more of it turns out someone who like, we don't know what the child's story before the weird bandits had him, right? And I wish it was like, there's a chip we're going to have to try and remove, because we thought it was in the cradle, but actually there was a secondary tracking chip, because it makes so many weird questions. For example, why not track the Mandalorian for revenge?
Yeah.
How is Kara off the grid? Because she doesn't have... So Mando might, because apparently he's just been off the grid for long enough. That's his magic specialty. His ship has never been registered, and maybe he was never in log banks because he got saved when he was so young and all the records got destroyed, or whatever, right? All those maybes, right? But Kara doesn't have that. She was literally part of the New Republic. if she's on the run, she gets found.
Yeah,
and it's like
I
this
think
technology just kind of it broke it for me in the first couple episodes when it was clear that it just magically tracked, and then throughout the series, like they get used more, and I'm like, I don't buy it. I think it's too much of a MacGuffin and too just like a easy thing to throw in without thinking through.
Yeah, I think it does lead a little bit to Kara's character as well, though. That she's in hiding. She's put herself into kind of this isolation, into hiding, to get away from what we don't know. But it also then speaks to, is she important enough that other people are trying to track her? Yes, they might have her data from when she was a trooper, but is there anyone out there actually looking for her? You know, we may get a little bit of that in the second season, and see a little bit more about her past and her character and that moving forward. But I think it speaks a little bit to that, but it definitely is a problem for a lot of it, especially when it's just a box with a couple of little antennas on and a little flashy
and it
light.
Seems to track like planets, like because like that last assassin in the Seven Samurai episode somehow got to the sanctuary planet.
Yes.
And then because at first it seemed like maybe it was just if you're close.
Is it proximity? Yeah, just driving around the galaxy. Oh, it's lit up a little bit more. I'll go this way. Yeah,
it's just I found I every time something like that popped up, I was like, really?
But again, I suppose it's all about, with bounty hunting, it's maybe a little bit about knowledge, a little bit about luck. Was that bounty hunter close enough to have heard that stuff was going down, so he went to investigate?
So that part I would agree. Like, look, they're all just searching the galaxy. Maybe he found some trail of clues and just winged it. But again, the whole the child is clearly the thing being tracked, not a chip or whatever, and it just raises too many questions about other parts, even within this series, let alone the general Star Wars universe. That I found troublesome, I guess. But like that's fine, right? Like you wrote a MacGuffin, it happens. It's still a sci-fi show. There are these things, like the in a similar way, the distress beacon is not attached to the station. It's literally the thing in the guy's hand at the prisoner episode. So then they it was a good double cross. I loved it. It was, but I could stomach that more because I don't know. It felt like it's a universal distress beacon, and so given this is a New Republic thing, and they're launching a fighter, we'll assume this is bad and we'll shoot it up. But at the same point, it's not a distress beacon. It's just a trouble beacon, because if it was a distress beacon, they would never shoot the bad guys.
Yeah.
And like at the end of the episode, I'm like, what the fuck was the beacon's like actual primary purpose? I don't understand. But also, But because it's like a one-off, I'm willing to accept a one-off MacGuffin in an episode versus the main antagonist of the first 6 episodes is the tracking beacons that there's millions of, and you're like, these can't be hard to make, and you just type in the child, no one even knows the race, so it's not like they're like, this is the genetic code you're tracking. It rubbed me the wrong way.
That's fair.
But again, basically it, right? I didn't like the gunslinger, thought it was a weak episode, didn't hate it, just thought it was a weak episode, and I didn't like the notion of the tracking beacons. That's pretty damn good for episodes.
Absolutely. And I think that leads me to kind of my final thought is I can't wait to get into the next season. I've been holding off on watching I think the first 2 episodes are out now, as of when we're recording this, and I've been holding off on them until we've had this conversation. I wanted to revisit it a little bit, and which I did so at the weekend, and watch various things and refresh my memory on it. So I'm now kind of up to speed when I go into kind of episode 1, and maybe I'll watch episode 2 a couple of days afterwards or something like that, ready for then it to be back into that weekly cycle of watching it. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I think Mando was one of the best shows last year, and I'm glad that even with kind of like COVID and everything like that, yes, it's a little bit longer for the people in the States because they had it sometime in the spring, I believe. We got it in the autumn instead, so it's only been a year for us in the UK, which works out nicely. And I'm glad that they've managed to keep it on this kind of track, I suppose, rather than it being pushed like other shows and movies and things like that have done. So yeah, really Really looking forward to getting into it. How about yourself?
Yeah, exactly. I was going to ask you what your hopes for the new series are, and maybe worry, if there is one.
Yeah,
and then I can probably do the same.
I hope they that it's not a retread of season one. That it builds on those characters and the relationships, and that we also have that good mix that we had in season one of following the story, but also those standalone episodes as well, which do play into the wider narrative, but give us like a side quest that goes off and does something a little bit. It might push the narrative a little bit, but it's not a full episode about that. That we have maybe not even like Mando or child specific standalone episodes. Maybe we have a standalone episode about Cara Dune, and we see a little bit more about her as well. That they expand it a bit, but that they don't stretch that out too much. And I don't want a Cara episode. I don't want a Grief episode. I then don't want a Mando episode. That it kind of things do still play in and flow very well through, and it feels right across the narrative of the season. It's not just a random episode thrown in here or there.
Yeah, so I'm the same way, although I think I might be. So I think the bottle episodes are, even though my least favorite episode is one of them, are really great, because I think that's what the first few episodes felt like, even though they were very much the same. The overarching narrative was meet the child, save the child.
Yep.
And betray the child, right? So not in that order, obviously. But it felt like a bottle episode, because it was like, do the job, then have to get to the bad guys, then change your mind and have this battle. And these all felt like very sequential, but like parted things. I think the series is strongest when it feels like it's just him and the child on the road.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I don't want is to, we got really good feedback and critical feedback about the story. I don't want it to become a story churn that turns it from sort of a serialized fiction type feeling show to an 8-hour movie. I think that would make the series worse.
Yeah.
So I liked the fact that they trusted the audience to get drip fed narrative.
Yep.
And I want them to keep drip feeding it. And so now he's basically at the end of the series, he's tasked with raising the child until it can be safe, or until he basically gets it to other people to raise it who are Mandalorian, right? And I think that's great, because that basically says you're on the road with this child, right? It's the medium-sized and littlest hobos. I would have said largest, but then I remembered that big beefy dude. Yeah. But so that's the thing that I'm a little worried that they will not take the win, why this was really successful, to heart, and maybe feed fan discourse a little too much. Disney's pretty notorious for chasing what the opinion is rather than what the creative vision is. So I'm really hoping that doesn't happen. But I'm pretty happy with the team. Jon Favreau's clearly got a good vision, and he has a good history of. Yeah, Iron Man 2 wasn't as good as Iron Man 1. That was still, I think, Favreau involved. I can't remember. Yeah, but anyway, I think it's good, and I'm looking forward to it, to see more bottle adventures and get more information about his past. And I'd be happy if Gideon wasn't super involved, and there was like a different sort of arc that got him in trouble for a few episodes. Like a mini boss type thing.
Yeah, it's not straight into a follow up of where season one sort of finished.
Yeah. So if it just becomes them on the run from Gideon, it will be less good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool. Good.
Basically my thought. Yeah. Brilliant.
So they are our thoughts on The Mandalorian season 1. Come back in the coming weeks to where I'm sure we'll talk about season 2. Maybe when it's all finished. But next week, I think we're going to get together again to talk about another topic. Maybe a little Spider-Man topic.
Oh, a little Spider-Man.
A little Spider-Man topic.
Or like a bunch of Spider-Men. A Spider-Man.
That's true.
Where
Spider-Man
is the
things
gender neutral that English has to have. The plural they.
Yes. Spider-theys.
We're saying Into the Spider-Verse for those of you trying to actually decode the nonsense that is coming out of our mouths.
Yes, absolutely. So we're going to return next Monday, again at midday, for Geek Out Weekly. And that will continue on until we run out of topics, which will never happen because there's so many things to talk about. And hopefully we'll have other guests coming on to give their opinions and maybe some interviews as well from people kind of in the industry. Remember, we are here almost all week. Tomorrow we've got 2 shows. Aadil, you're going to be taking a look at a game. Sort of a first look at a game, I think. Is it going to be the Falconeer tomorrow?
It is the Falconeer.
Nice. And then in the evening we have our live recording of Tanked Up, the podcast about craft beer and video games. Wednesday I'm going to be taking a look at lunchtime for an hour at another game. I think I might try Undungeon Arena again, the game I played last week, but maybe delve into the other character that's available for that game.
Oh yeah, cool.
And then on Friday we have a new creator joining us. Radari is going to be giving us his Friday evening. I think he's going to be streaming from about 10 PM on here on the Out of Lives channel. So if you've got nothing to do Friday night or you want something on in the background, Radari does a few different games, plays a little bit of Apex and stuff like that. So I'd be interested to see what he's going to bring in for his first session with Out of Lives. Obviously, you can go to outoflives.net to look at all of the other shows, read articles and all that other stuff. You can catch this if you tuned in too late or you'd like to recap it. It's going to be up as a podcast, hopefully coming up this week, and we're going to be putting it on our YouTube page as well, so you can rerun this and join in the conversation like that too. Remember, when the podcast service does start up, or that podcast show starts up, subscribe, like it if you want, rate it, do all of those sorts of things, as you can do on Twitch. You can subscribe there, you can do that on YouTube too, all of those things. I'll let you interject. What were you going to say?
I was just saying, and if you wanted to hassle Ben directly, you can reach him at Nova_47.
Yep.
On all the things, and me at the Omniarch on all of the things. And if you want to tweet us, Out of Lives Network, at Out of Lives Network. That is where you can reach us. That's our main Twitter for the website, and we aren't going to have a separate one for this podcast. So that's the main one. Go message us. Tell us why we're wrong about The Mandalorian, or why The Gunslinger is secretly the best episode because, reasons.
Or let us know your thoughts on Enter the Spider-Verse, and we can incorporate that into the show next week.
Yeah, if you have any questions or topics or interesting facts you want to bring up on Spider-Verse, let us know, and we will chat about them on the episode next Monday at noon. Perfect. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We will catch you soon. Bye. www.outoflives.net